Okay. Today I'm pleased to welcome an authority, a guiding light, and an innovator in the tradition of karate, McCarthy Hanshi. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Hanshi, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a pleasure. We're friends for many years. I don't get a chance to see you very often. And I mean, I don't even know the last time I was in Vienna was a long time ago, but thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Before we start the interview, I would like to introduce you to the viewers. And the question is, what is the best way to introduce McCarthy Hanshi? So let me try this way. McCarthy Hanshi is the founder and director of the International Rikyu Karate Research Society. He gives seminars all over the world teaching Koryu, Uchinadi Kempo Jitsu, Aiki Kempo Jiu-Jitsu, and Yamane Ryu. He's the author of groundbreaking literature in the field of martial arts, to name just a few books: the Bubishi, the classical Kata of Okinawan Karate, the 2 volumes of ancient Okinawan martial arts, the Tampeshu, the book about Funakoshi Gichin Sensei, My Art, the book about Motobu Choki, The Legend of the Fist, and his forthcoming book on Chotoku Kian can in any case already be added to this list. Most people who have a deeper interest in karate know that about you. I would therefore like to introduce you from my personal experience with you. We first met in Vienna in the mid-1990s, where you had a stopover, and we only had a few hours time, but it was enough for a ride on the famous Vienna giant Ferris wheel and to talk about karate. In the following years, I attended several seminars in Germany and also organized 2 seminars in Vienna with you. And the last time we met again was, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago at a seminar in Spain. I've always experienced you as a thoughtful and very generous teacher who shared his immense wealth of experience in tradition, history, kata, applications, and etiquette very openly and always with great enthusiasm. So you have literally planted a lot of seeds into my personality and into my karate. The seed of thinking outside the box, the seed of sharing one's knowledge with joy and dedication with like-minded people, the seed of honoring the tradition of the old masters, the seed to develop my own application based on the 2-person drills you have developed and with which you have revolutionized karate, and the seed for founding my own research society for the karate of Toyama Kanken Sensei. So in life, there are often people who have a lasting influence on you, even though you rarely see them. In my path of karate, you are definitely one of the few people who have had lasting influence on my thinking, on my training, and on my view of karate. And I would like to use the beginning of this interview by thanking you personally for your remarkable work over the past decades and the many seeds you have planted inside me.
Well, my friend, first of all, I'm humbled by your generosity, and I want to say thank you for caring and sharing. I don't often hear that. I'm very grateful that you have remembered me in such a gracious light, and I hope that I will be able to continue, if only a little bit, share those insights with you that bring us together. Even if some of us pursue that pathway down the tributaries which have flown out from the source and throughout the world, or those of us who have chased it more closely back to its roots. I think, even though the distance that separates us physically is great, there's an unshakable bond that we've established through training that hold us together. And And I think that means that we'll never be very far apart in spirit. So thanks for the camaraderie and the support. And may I be also offer you my congratulations once again on your recent promotion to ninth Dan and Hanshi. You're a shining example of just exactly what this art represents. And now living here back in Japan again, and being here in the island of karate, it's there's still an interesting cultural dichotomy between we foreigners who embrace the art deeply, and in many cases it's a vocation throughout our lives that give us not just direction and meaning, but something that gives us the opportunity to put back into to help empower others, which I think is one of the untold messages of what the art represents, beyond the punching and kicking or the winning of trophies. There's I always think, mind you, many young people don't ask me this, but I know that those who have been embracing the tradition for a lifetime realize that liking what it is we do to a pathway, it depends how far down the pathway you get before it becomes evident that there's no destination, or the destination is not the goal. It is the journey itself. And it's a journey that starts in a dojo, and it's the fusion of art and science coming together to create a transformative pathway and a process by which we discover that we can in fact be something greater than the total of our sum forces. And in that area, we have something to condition our body, cultivate the mind, and nurture the spirit. And so even though there are many pathways with which to embrace the tradition, styles, if you will, the message remains the same. And it's one of seeking character perfection and self-protection. And whether we ever achieve any of the self-perfection stuff or not, I'm not the big supporter of that, by the way. And it's an interesting story, actually, because it's when I was, in fact, just today I'm doing an interview for a South American martial art magazine, and they asked me a question about, so at what point should you really start to, consider what it is you're going to do? And I said, isn't that interesting? Because so many of us in the Western world are educated in a very old methodology of conformity, where you have to learn to read, learn to write, learn to count, and all of these things. But I still, to this day, after all of these years, it's rarely do you see an educational program that teaches you how to think, or at least, if not think, then think for yourself. And where individualism and the creative independence it becomes the yardstick with which to measure the direction in which our life will take. And if we're armed with the ability to head in that direction, it's going to work for us. But even if we never get to where we're going, we can look back at the end and say, it was a life well lived. Mm-hmm. Because the effort was the value. Mm-hmm. So rather than I'm waiting till I'm 65 before, and anyway on this interview, I said to the person, in 1967, it was my last year to play Little League baseball. I was a child, just 12 years old. and was my last year, and I couldn't play the next year. Also, I have my eyes on ice hockey as well, so. And and I was not a good batter. I was a catcher, by the way. My job was catching the ball, and I was the first game of the season, and so it was a big deal. All the local mayor of our town was there, and parents and so on. And I came up to bat, and like I say, I wasn't a great batter. I was a good catcher, but not a great batter. Anyway, that team we were playing, that they had a great pitcher, and I knew he was. They call him the strikeout king, and he wasn't there. I don't know what happened. The kid never showed up, and I went, "Oh, this is great," And they had this guy, he's the sub who came in to pitch the ball, and he was terrible. It was like slow motion. And I hit the ball, and the ball went all the way over the fence. And I remember standing there in amazement. And my coach going, "Run, McCarthy, run!" Oh God, I hit a home run. I was in disbelief. But anyway, I ran around the base, long story short. That was the only hit I got all year long, by the way. But that hitting the first home run on the first game gave me two things. Number one, the mayor of the city used to be the television weatherman. Mm-hmm. So he took my ball and signed it. All these years later, I still have the baseball, I keep it on my desk, with a little umbrella and rain on and stuff like that, and so that got me that. And number two, it got me a guaranteed position on the all-star team for the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So the moral of the story is this: end of the year, we get on an airplane, we start flying around to all these little communities where I live on the east coast of Canada. And we win this game, and we win this game, and we win this game. And then we fly all the way out to Montreal, Canada, to play for the big championships, which, if we would have won, would have put us into the World Series for Little League Baseball. They take it very serious over there in America. Yeah. And anyway, we lost the game. That's another story. But why I want to bring this up is because it always serves to remind me of a really important lesson. In those days, in the 60s, when you got on an airplane, you usually got a suit and tie, and they used to smoke on airplanes, and you'd sit in the back for smoking. Kids sat up front so they didn't have to get the cigarette smoke. And what I remember most of all about, and my mother said to me, "Make sure you're very polite, Well, we're Canadians, so we're always very polite, right? And of course, if you don't say, "I want to sit by a window or sit by an aisle," the airline company always puts you in the middle, because nobody wants to sit in the middle. And so I'll always be sitting in the middle. I'm a kid, 12 years old, and all these old people sitting beside me. And so I used to say to my mom, "What should I say to the old people?" And my mom said, "Don't be afraid to strike up a conversation and ask them, how's life? Mm-hmm. Where are you going? Yeah. What are you going to do?" And I used to always get this in the 60s. "Well, my husband died, and I'm going to Florida." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but why are you going to Florida?" "Well, that was our dream. We always wanted to go to Florida, or Hawaii or Mexico or something." I used to ask my mom, I said, "Why is everybody waiting? Why do you wait?" I'm a kid. I don't know the difference. Yeah. I'm taking karate for a couple of years. I don't have any spiritual insight. I'm just, I kick and punch. That's all I do. And my mom says, "Well, son, people work very hard all their lives. And then when they retire, they want to get a reward and enjoy their life." And I went, "Why?" I'm a kid, so my whole life is about enjoying it every day, And there's a funny quote that says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And it goes, "I don't want to grow up. I want to be a kid all my life, And the funny part about that is, in this pathway of the fighting arts, which is so heavily influenced by a combination of Confucian thought, Buddhist theory, and Taoism, that you get this fusion where you want to. They want you to conform to a certain way of thinking, but at the same time, they want you to be one with nature. And the other time is you have to learn to give up everything and realize that by detachment or not wanting to be attached to things, you can have this free and happy life. And I said, well, all you have to be as a kid, just if you haven't grown up by the time you're 50, you don't have to. I was trying to convey this to this young man from South America in Spanish, and it was he was like, "Wow, that's great. That's great stuff." And I said, "Well, it's not just the Japanese, or it's not just the Chinese, like." And it wasn't, before René Descartes. I mean, there's been a lot of smart people in the world, and I think that's why I think all these pathways, they tend to converge at some point in one study. One of my favorite anthropologists was Joseph Campbell. There are lots of them, but Joe Campbell was one of the big ones for me. And he wrote dozens of books. My favorite, of course, was Hero with a Thousand Faces. But and he did that Bill Moyer's interviews. But where I first got the value of who this guy was when he did this brainstorming with George Lucas at Skywalker Ranch way back in the 70s. And they come up with this idea together, like the Star Wars idea. No, Joe Campbell didn't come up with the Star Wars idea, but he came up with the idea of how to present Darth Vader as a warrior, kind of like a samurai. And I thought, that's pretty cool stuff. So that kind of attracted me toward listening to Campbell. And it also, I didn't realize it at the time, but it also planted seeds for me to better understand what my own teacher would, many years later, Richard Kim, would as was a student. Who knows what he learned from Toyama, but anyway, he credits Toyama with being a mentor, same as Kinjo Hiroshi. He said, onko chishin, study the old to better understand the new. And I would gravitate toward the anthropological current of studying life in many ways. If you know how something was cradled and what forces affected its growth and direction, you might be better prepared to understand why things are the way they are today, and particularly with regards to a look into the future. So when I started getting all of this, I don't want to say indigenous culture, but that's in fact what it was, because when you look, we are martial arts, so we're samurai. We want to look at that particular thing, but you start seeing it in Aboriginal cultures around the world, Native American Indians, tribal factions from the Arctic. African villages, Middle Eastern lifestyles, 2,000-3,000 years before the birth of Christ. And everybody's kind of thinking the same way about a certain group of things. So I don't think that, as I say, the Zen influenced appreciation society has got a monopoly on this type of thinking. And even people who have never had any type of training like that naturally gravitate toward, look, I want, perhaps the older they get, I'm looking for an interesting and a challenging life, but I prefer to live a little bit more on the guidelines of safety and appreciation and embrace empathy and those forms of philosophy that tend to bring meaning to your life, because not when they empower you, they all tend to say the same thing. You kind of struggle. First of all, okay, let's call this the waking up. Who am I? And then once that's established, and look at, as well as sometimes people never wake up. They just go through life, and then so we call that a waking up here, a discovery. Hey, I'm me, and I either like or don't like me, and I want to go somewhere. And once you're captured by that essence of first of all, introspection, and then you have the desire to want to accomplish something. There's always been a need for then some type of tradition that has that provides a pathway to get there. And of course, the fighting arts, as we know, is one of those wonderful pathways. And then, of course, on the pathway, you are invariably going to encounter barriers, roadblocks, failure, which in essence is really the lesson, I suppose, if you will. And and the lessons then usually need that mentor there to help guide you, because that's where we face that failure thing. How then do you pick yourself back up after, fall down 7, get up 8, bodhidharma, and so how do you get over, through, around, wait, what mechanism is it going to be to get you then to that next level of change? Because the only thing that's inevitable, of course, is change. And so that's really not, it's how the change is welcomed and the responses to it that make all the difference in the world. And of course, there's the coming into contact with that source of higher power. And then of course there's the being empowered by it. And then of course that's where the decision is made. Then is, what are we going to do with that? Am I going to buy a Rolls Royce, or am I going to turn around and help other people? And that's where we tend then to say, if the pathway is not paved, if I can use that metaphor, with a body of moral philosophy that serves to govern the behavior of those who become empowered, there's really an imbalance, And I think you can see that largely today in people's character and behaviors, And that's why I think the bunbu ryodo, the bunbu ichi, bunbu ryodo, bunen buichi desu kedomo is the same. The bun is the pursuit other than the physical, scholarly, intellectual, philosophical, that pathway to get inside and to overcome. And then, of course, the physical itself, So, and there's always that. Funagoshi said it best, karate is like boiling water. You turn the flame off, the water gets cold. And we all experienced that, either through boredom or injury, or sometimes we step back from the intensity of physical training to embrace perhaps another, whether it's spiritual, pedagogical, philosophical, holistic. There's so many wonderful areas with which to study. And so anyway, coming back to the point, I thought, that's the thing is, if nothing else, find out what the heck it is you want to do early in life so that you can be prepared. And the education system just doesn't do that, It's still, make sure you learn the multiplication tables, and make sure you know how to. And today I see, like I grew up riding a bike, and summer vacation, I'd leave the house after breakfast, and my mother would say, "Be back by nightfall," and nobody was getting raped and robbed and beaten and stabbed or killed, and the children were not being kidnapped, and we fell off our bikes, and we got in fights with our next door neighbor, and the next day we were best friends, and we were we were very physical. I don't see that today. I don't see, and I don't say that's bad or good. I just say that that's what's that expression? An idle mind is a devil's workshop. Find me a child that's passionate about anything, and I'll show you some kid who's going somewhere. Show me a kid who's got no interest in anything, and I'll tell you that's a devil's workshop. And I think that the reason why I believe that karate, it doesn't have to be karate. It could be anything. It could be taekwondo, kung fu, kendo, judo, anything that you can become passionate about. And the reason why we say the fighting arts, you and I both know, is because there's that triple whammy, if you will. There's the physical exercise, there's the mental conditioning, and there's the spiritual pursuit. Those are the three, that's a magic combination, because it's like our process, our Shudokan process. You learn from tradition, then you break the chains of tradition, and then ultimately you transcend the tradition. But it's like T.S. Eliot, you just wind up back at where you first started, if only to know it for the very first time. And so, so this may keep going around in a circle and circle and circle. But for example, that way of learning corresponds wonderfully with the circle of life as well. Physical, philosophical, spiritual, youth, adulthood, maturity. You cannot take a child and philosophize or give a lecture in spiritual meditation to the kid. It's not going to work. And by the same token, you get the old guy some aerobic HIT training program, probably going to cause a heart attack or something. So where's the balance? Where's the balance? Where's the guidance? So when I started off with the dojo, and we say dojo because it's Japanese, it's the place where the way is embraced. It could be dojang, mogun, training hall. We do a lot of yagai geiko, yagai training outdoors here in Okinawa. So I mean, my dojo's well, I have my dojo downtown, but my other dojo's, it's at the beach over here. It's and keep in mind that hundreds of years people training on the beach, so it's and one reason okay to train on the beach is because we can yell and scream and give key eyes, and nobody next door is going to say, "Hey, shut up! You're making too much noise," So it's all within the tradition, and I think that that ability to cognitively identify this and let me say quantify it, means that we can then put it into a contextual premise of from a pedagogical point to impart the information. Not everybody is going to get the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcomes, even though there is certainly a foundational platform everybody has to make it through. Let's call it boot camp, if you will, to strengthen the body, condition the mind, cultivate the spirit, to be able to embrace what the middle level and above teachings are all about. So anyway, sorry.
No, sorry.
Yeah, we'll have no time for the questions if I keep talking.
Yeah, thank you very much for this wisdom, for this life wisdoms at the beginning. But we should have time for the questions as well. So in the last months, I have intensively worked on the special techniques or the innermost techniques of Toyama Kanken, which he has described in his book Karate do Daihokan. And in the course of this work, I have faced a large number of questions. So like, are there secret techniques or special kata that were passed on by a teacher only to a few students or only to the one chosen student? And I have thought about this a lot and have come in contact with the mystery of our tradition. And therefore, my questions deal with the transmission of the tradition of karate and with the mysterious part of karate. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation and would like to start with the first question. You lived in Japan in the 1980s, have visited China several times, and you currently live in Okinawa with your wife. So you know the Japanese soul and the Japanese society very, very well. And you have known very many of the old Okinawan masters personally. So I have a question about the transmission of the tradition of the martial arts. So what do you think? Were there secret techniques or secret kata in the Chinese and Okinawan schools that were only passed down within the school or within the family system?
Well, let me just describe to the listener that you and I have already talked about this quite extensively over the last few weeks leading into this. And the real simple answer is yes. That's the simple answer, okay? Then we have to bring to the attention because today, let me back up a little bit first, okay? Let's say that you asked me this question, sorry. Let's say that in 1980, I commanded the same belief and information knowledge I possess now. I did not then, but let's just say I did for the sake of this argument. Let's say that it's now, this is 2020, 2021, and I'm talking 1980, that's 40 years ago, okay? So let's just pretend for a minute, it's now, ding, 1980, you ask me this question. I could go like this. Of course, the secret techniques were held by the master, and I can give you that whole, and take the pot, go to the Shaolin temple, you have a secret, nobody, bullets can't hurt, all that stuff, right? But what's happened since, say, let's say 1970, the Kung Fu series, Bruce Lee, a million movies, and then, one after the time, Jiu-Jitsu was big, Judo was big, karate, Taekwondo, Ninja, Kobudo, and then there was a mixed martial arts, Kakutogi, BJJ, MMA, so it seems that at every generation or so, there's been an infiltration of a different interpretation of the fighting arts that bring us together. And it's kind of funny because let's say way back in maybe 50 years ago, in say the 1970 or even more, gosh, I've been just thinking about how long I've been doing this for. Right? I was going to say in the 1960s when I started, the mindset was, very, you practice Kung Fu or Jiu-Jitsu, Nowadays, those doesn't carry the same meaning. Pretty soon people discovered that, Judo and Jiu-Jitsu lost its, by the way, I'm a big fan of Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, but what I mean to say is that the tradition in the sport kind of lost its glitter and gloss to karate, striking arts. And then of course, Taekwondo came in, and we saw the wonderfully difficult kicks that were being introduced on the North American, European stage. And then, then came in the kickboxing, PKA, World Karate, Professional Karate Association. And then we started seeing guys like Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, Benny Urquidez, Wally Sloki, people like this coming in, offering something new to what we were already doing. So people who were a little bit, I don't want to be doing any grabbing. I just want to do striking, but I'm tired of, the point karate. Oh, now look, here's kickboxing. And then, I get tired of kicking above the waist. Oh, look here, there's the WKA. I can kick below the waist. Oh, I got to go over here now. And then every other version of kick fighting evolved. And then people said, oh, there's something in France called Savate. Oh my God, there's something. Oh, look, there's something in Thailand called Muay Thai and Muay Borat. Oh my God. So as the world started to grow from I'll use the word social media point of view, where we were learning more about what's happening around the world, our interest into this secrecy started. I don't mean to say it started, it dissolved. It did not dissolve, but ultimately we get to the point where you got a blue belt in jiu-jitsu defeating a Godan in karate. This guy's got 1 year experience or 3 months experience in an MMA club, and he takes on Sensei Joe from Taekwondo or something, Sabum Joe from Taekwondo, who's 6'9", he defeats him in 2 seconds. So a lot of these interesting dichotomies that continue to unfold as we continue to explore the various ways of combative engagement through culture and heritage and outcome and application. This idea about was there something secret that we missed started to fall quietly dormant. And because people were saying, well, look, it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter that the guy practiced for 25 years and had the secrets of Ya Young Yo. This guy who was like a purple belt just strangled him unconscious in 30 seconds, So, or then the secret obviously didn't work, whatever. I thought the secret was run like hell, or, and so, okay, so that's what I wanted to say first. I want to, let me just establish this first, okay? Because I might give an answer and somebody else will say, oh, he doesn't know anything about that, I made it my point of knowing all about that, right? Okay, so now let me just look at one other thing. So when I went to Japan, it was a wonderful paradigm shift for me, because I came out, as you know, I came out of a fighting background. So I never really needed the martial arts to learn how to fight. I grew up in a very violent community as a child. So, and I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. On top of that, being in the I don't want to call it the ghetto, but we call it the hood, where I grew up. And so there was a lot of physical violence. So I was very familiar with all violence and guns and knives and gang fighting and things like that. So for me, the appeal for the fighting arts was that confidence and strength of character that allowed you not to fight when someone else may have just at the drop of a finger entered in the fight. So I was already looking at this as a completely different mentality than the other guy, you see. Now, the reason I want to say that is for first of all, one reason is, let's say, for example, you didn't know anything about this body of moral philosophy, which served to govern the behavior of those who might have a bit of an attitude problem. And this fighting art has been the wonderful medicine that they needed to help change the direction and flow of their life, to calm them down, to give them that inner peace, to keep strong and healthy, and certainly to defend the life and honor of anybody under any, or country, under an invasion or threat to a violence, of course. But it was it a secret that you didn't know this? So I want to define secret as well. But just before we go over there, and I don't mean to make this into a huge umbrella, but it really is, by the way. But I want to tell you about me getting to Japan first, and I want to make a point about swordsmanship that I practice, because then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make the point. Okay. So anyway, I'm in Japan, and my wife is pregnant. I have no job. I'm retired from fighting. I'm down training on the beach one day, and sorry, not the other. I was training on the beach one day, and a guy said, "Oh my God, you should go up to St. Mary's College. There's going to be it's an international school. There's going to be a martial art demonstration up there, and you have a lot of fun. You might make a couple of dollars." I'm, oh, great, okay. Anyway, so I go up to St. Mary's, and the guy said, "I'm going to give you, the equivalent of about $150, to give a demonstration." I went, great. I give the demonstration. A guy approaches me. His name is Gene Pelk. And at the time, I don't know it at the time, but he's the vice president of Marvel Comics in Japan. Comic books in Japan they're a big deal. They're like the size of a telephone book, and anyway. And I don't know Marvel Comics. I was a DC guy, Superman, I was Batman. I didn't know Marvel, anyway. So, and by the way, Gene is also the guy who invented Spider-Man with Stan Lee and stuff like that. Right? So, and he suffered polio as a child, so he walked with a limp, and he comes up and he goes, hey, and he's speaking English to me. Those days, my Japanese was not so good. And he says, hey, he said, "You're pretty good." And I went, "Oh, really? Thanks." And he goes, he said, "Are you interested in fighting?" I went, "Nah, not really." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, we got this stuff going on, shoot boxing, shoot fighting, submission wrestling. We need foreigners to fight the Japanese, and I said, "Oh, well, I don't know about those things, but how much does it pay?" "I don't care." I used to work in some of the worst watering holes in Toronto, watering holes, seedy nightclubs, where I was only making $25-30 a night, all the drink, all the fights you get, all the girls oops, you can edit that part out. But it was, I was very used. I was putting my life on the line for peanuts at night and fighting as a young man for $100 for a purse, So he said to me, he goes, about 300,000 yen. I went, excuse me? And those days, 100,000 yen was about 1,500 American dollars. So 300,000. I went, that's like 45, that's almost 5,000 Canadian dollars. I went, oh my God. I said, I'll do it. So anyway, long story short, and that's how I met this guy, Sayama Satoru. And that led me to Caesar Takeshi. So that took me to a style called Shuto, submission wrestling. And then that took me to shoot boxing. And then shoot boxing took me to the UWF. And then UWFI led me to Pride. So it was all this interesting pathway of functional fighting. The only reason I want to say that is because I learned how to take my high school wrestling and my background in judo and jiu-jitsu along with my striking arts and fuse it together long before the birth of the UFC. So the interesting part about this and how it fits into what we're doing is we travel around Japan for our fight card, from Hokkaido down to Kyushu to Fukuoka, and all stops in between. And anyway, so I'm in Kyoto, and I see this. We're at a place called the Butokuden, and I can tell you exactly when it was. It was the 29th of April, 1988. The reason I remember it so well, other than the photographic memory, is because that's the old emperor Hirohito Midori Nichi. That's the old emperor's birthday. Shigatsu Nijikyu Nichi desu kedomo. So I said, and they always have at the Butokuden, they have the Dainippon Butokukai. Where Toyama was, yeah. They have the big festival, right? Anyway, so I see this demonstration. They're all dressed up in like the battle regalia, the samurai stuff, and I go, I love photography. That's another story. Time out there. Why does he like photography? When I was a child, our house burned down. We were lucky to make it out with our lives, but we lost everything. No baby photos, it's my mother, on my 6th birthday, my mother gave me a camera and said, sweetheart, learn to take photos because, you'll need those in your old age. And anyway, so I've always been, I got to get photos. I remember trying to get my camera out there to get the photos. And the head guy came over to me, he goes, and talks to me in Japanese. He goes, something about, would you like to practice what we do? And I went, just a moment. I said to my wife, Yuriko, kore nani desu? So what kind of desu kedomo? Asked my wife, what's he saying? He goes, because I thought he just said, would you like to practice with us? Why would the headmaster with the TV camera coming, and I'm telling you, they were all over the place, come over to a guy like me and say, would you want to practice? I'm in a karate uniform, and he goes, and I went, yes. I was going to go. Then later he would never see me again. I would like run away, right? And then I watched their demonstration, and I said to my wife, I said, honey, and I lived up on the mainland. I lived up on in the Fujisawa, Kanagawa Prefecture, about 1 hour, 59 minutes outside of Tokyo on a JR down in a beautiful place. But they were down there in Kyoto, which is like a few hours away. I said to my wife, I said, honey, I think we're moving. I just went, do you ever see anything you go, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And you know what it was? It was Sugino Yoshio sensei doing a demonstration of Tenshin Shoden Katori Shinto Ryu. And I looked at it and I went, I want to do that. And that became my passion for the next few years. And when he gave me his card, I went, oh my God, honey, does that say Kawasaki? 30 minutes from my house. Was where the dojo was, and that became my new passion. And the reason I say that is because as well as I do that in Koryu, Buge, old school martial arts that were developed before, during the warring states that were systematized and handed down for hundreds of years. We have certain practices that are not in modern stuff. One is called keppa, where I take, I cut my hand, I sign a promise that I'm going to be loyal to the teachings and so on and so on. And so, and then the teachings come in certain levels, there's like Newman. Newman means Newman means coming through the gate, coming inside the gate and learning the foundation level. And then there's Shokyu, Chukyu, and Jokyu. These are these levels. They don't have like Shodan and Nidan, they don't have, or black belt. They have a going through the gate. Then they have a introductory level, middle level teachings, advanced teachings, and then Himitsuwaza, hidden, secret teachings. Okay, so I'm going around a long way, but it's a conversation, and let's, because I'm going to come back to you later and say there are no secrets anyway. There's just, if you call, if I ask you something you don't know the answer, then it's a secret, right? So there's secrets and then there's secrets. So it's funny because it only took me around 2 years to learn the whole system of Katori Shinto-ryu. Jo against Jo, Bokto, and then Ryoto, and then Bo, and then Naginata, and so on, right? Yari, and then you have secret katas, right? And it's funny because when I was learning the secret katas, I went, it just seems to be a combination of this and this move that are not in a geometrical pattern compared to the other one. But what we like, and what I was so inspired by with the Katori Shinto-ryu, is that it's two-person engagement drills bring together that which is humanly possible with a sword against the human body. And the reception, the reception of the tori is to be able to receive it in the ways that are best designed to receive and respond, and then either capture it or control somehow, and that methodology spoke very, very loudly to me. And as you know, as a young man, I did Chinese Kung Fu. And as you know, the Bubishi has always been a passion for me since the 70s. And everything is in two-person drills, to the point where I came to realize, isn't the two-person drills the real fighting art? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's the fighting art, because it's the fight and the art of receiving it, because it's defensive, unless you're using it offensively, to receive the attack and then submit the person somehow, and or subjugate the person, So without the attack, there's no defense, because there's nothing to defend against. And so this whole mentality spoke loudly to me. And where I might not have actually, look, I could do the drills. It's like when I was a kid. One of my first Kung Fu styles was Wing Chun. Okay, I'm no authority. But, I learned Siu Lam Pao, Cham Kyu Bilji. I learned, Chi Sao, Urito, Po, and, dozens of ways with which to hit the Mokjong, right? But of course, most of our time was spent in Chi Sao, and it was sticky hands, because everything came from engagement. And even though I've loved that, and I still love my Chi Sao, my Muchi video, of course, I never felt comfortable with that. That wasn't how I wanted to express myself in a combative tradition. And then, I did all these other things. And then, of course, by the time I got to the Bubishi, you have these two-person drills from the 48 illustrations. And I went, this is making sense. If the attacker does this, you can do that. And if it doesn't work, you can also do this and this and this. And in the process of trying to effectively negotiate that, which is scripted, not random, I know he's going to grab my throat. I know he's going to get me in a headlock or a bear hug or whatever. I know that. So it's not scripted. Or it is scripted. You can say in this case, it's not unscripted. Okay, give me the bear hug now. And we're practicing. I still wasn't getting it. And even though years earlier, having been on my high school wrestling team, my teacher was John Grosdanoff, and he himself was a university level Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling champion, who would always say to us, McCarthy, that put a grapevine on him, and every time he would tell me something, he'd say, no, and here's how you escape from it. It was just in one ear and out the other, And then, of course, I started doing this cross-comparative analyses with the old Kano jiu-jitsu stuff from the 1895 book. And then, of course, I was studying Irving Hancock and Ue Nishi's work also from that area. And then somebody said, you should try, if you're doing cross-comparative analyses and you're looking at this, you might also want to look at this Hans Tellhofer and Nicholas Bedler. And I went, okay, I don't know them. Who are they? He goes, and this guy who was recommending, he taught, I love my sword, right? So he was a Western swords guy. And he did mostly Spanish rapier stuff and, but, buckler, short sword, he did everything. But, and he goes, I study a lot of these reenactment arts from Western martial arts, and, there's the Spanish book, and there's the Arto di Mancia, and this guy, this artist was commissioned in the Renaissance period to reproduce a lot of the old fighting arts, fight books, and Petter and these guys, and I went, okay. So I started doing a cross-comparative analyses, and it gradually dawned upon me, okay, wait, why are these guys from like Italy doing the same thing the guys are doing from Japan, and why are the Nordic wrestlers grabbing the guy the same way as the Mongolians are? And I know it's simple today, but in the 1970s and 80s, nobody was talking like this. It was sacrilege to cross compare anything. And anyway, then a friend of mine who's an archaeologist was in Egypt, and he said, he called me, Patrick, you gotta come over here, man. He said, we just discovered this. It was an old dig site from the 1930s. They brought it back up again, and it's this temple tomb. And I said, "Whoa, we got some treasures." He goes, "Well, not the type you're thinking about, but yeah." Anyway, I flew to Egypt, and I took the ride down the river, down the Nile to the Armenia, and then took the camel, the caravan across to Armenia, and to just see this Beni Hassan temple tombs. And there it was, man, the temple was built 5,000 years ago. That's 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. That's 4,500 years, it's 3,500 years before the birth of the Shaolin Temple. And you and I, we like the Japanese / Okinawan stuff, and I, wherever I was studying it, I had to find the commonality between Japan. I had to find the Zen simplicity. I had to find my way to Okinawa, like this. And this was the last straw for me. I was not clinching anymore to the belief it had to be Japanese. I just said, that's it. It's human beings. And it doesn't matter when you were born or what culture you come from or what your gender. Okay, it does matter about gender and age and size, because those are the mitigating circumstances always. But as a rule, it's human being against human being, and it's usually civil or domestic, because of the warrior stuff. It's a different mentality for the way you embrace your training, and the inspiration is completely different. It's not about self-defense in the domestic sense of the word. And so I just went, that's it. I change everything now. And at the time, I was reading the Canon of Judo by Mifune Kyuzo. And so, he was one of the first guys with Kano to look at the science, the mathematics, the dynamics, not the geometry, but the applied science, lever, fixed axle, wheel, wedge, the 5 ancient machines, and I went, that's it. And I learned flexion, extension, pronate, supinate, deviate, rotate. I started learning terms. Now, the reason why I'm saying all this now is because I used the term earlier. I said the dojo is a place where the mentor, I didn't define or quantify what the mentor is, only that the mentor is a person who shows you the way. That the mentor fuses, synthesizes, weaves together, brings from one element to another together science and art. So science we can quantify, but I'm afraid art we are not capable of quantifying, because if you quantify it, it's no longer art, you see. I can tell you this, class, welcome to my art lesson. This is a paintbrush. Big ones are for making clouds, little ones are for making eyelashes. This is oil colors, this is charcoal, this is pastels, these are watercolors or oils, whatever. This is a canvas, and this is my handkerchief, but I can make big clouds or oceans with this. And okay, everybody got the lesson. This is the palette, put it there. You got the 1 hour, go paint me a flower. And 50 people in a class, and then 50 people come back later in 1 hour. And why do we have 50 different flowers? You know what I mean? And you got the same tools, right? So art and science comes together, but that's such an individualized process of embracing it after the foundation is built, that you gotta grab the. And Kinjo Sensei gave me this, by the way. Oh yeah, I think this might be Toyama's quote, by the way. I'm not sure. You can look at it. It goes like this. It goes, how you do anything is how you do everything. So it has to do with you always, how you embrace the danger, how you embrace the lesson, and so on. Okay, so anyway, enough jumping around the bush. Secrets. Okay, so in the traditional schools of swordsmanship, because we're talking Japanese and secrets, Chinese Kung Fu, there's a certain level. You come into the class, we don't care who you are, shut up and get over there, like this one, Fugenjiko. You can't see it, but I have it there. Fugen, I have a lot of kanji in my office, but that was a Fugenjiko, actions, not words. Show me, don't tell me. So, so you're a beginner, you have no right to ask any questions, just shut your mouth, get in class and train. And then you're training. So it doesn't mean 3 months later, you're going to tell me what to do. And it doesn't mean 6 months later, and as a rule, especially with the Chinese, not so much with the Japanese, but more with the Okinawa, because the Okinawas lean more toward Chinese mentality. Give me 10 years and then start asking questions, okay? Because usually by 10 years, you won't need to ask any more questions, because you'll understand what the learning process is. But these days in the modern 21st century, it goes, the guy joins the school, 3 weeks later, he quits. That instructor doesn't know what he's talking about, with a whole 3 weeks of lessons, that guy is telling you that the teacher's no good. Or my favorite. Oh yeah, the bullshit martial arts. I studied it. I did I did a few weeks of Taekwondo and a couple of Jiu-Jitsus and Jiu-Jitsus. I did Jiu-Jitsu, and then I did some kickboxing and then I karate, and they don't know what they're doing, I'm doing MMA now, that's the real stuff. So 10 years in, what it does is it gave you, from a functional point of view, and please remember this, let me use this example to settle this. Let's pretend it's not 2020 now. It's let's say it's 1820 or 1720 or 1620, and you and I are two guys like we are living in Japan, and we're not peasants or farmers. We were born in a warrior class. So as from childhood, we start to learn all about fighting arts. Now we're not learning it to become artists of life. That's later, and that's later. I'm learning how to use a sword so that when I go into battle on behalf of my clan, my family, whatever, I'm helping them overcome. I'm becoming part of a larger whole to focus in on following whatever the tactical strategy is to overcome the enemy. So the word here is functionality. That's what's the most important thing. So I studied swordsmanship or whatever the fighting art was for functionality. That's what I'm doing. And so in order to learn, first of all, you got to learn about the sword. And then you learn how the sword works, and then you learn basic reception drills, and then impact, and all kinds of scenario-driven practices from kind of a passive resistance module, and then gradually to exponentially invest in it with aggressive resistance, and then in an unscripted, random method, you test your, maybe you test them with wooden swords, or you test them with a dull blade, but you begin to test the veracity of your function. So, and I'm going to tell you this, not every samurai was an overly functional fighter. I mean, you got to remember that on the days of the battle, hundreds of thousands of people died, or thousands of people died, maybe the odds were not like Thermopylae, but I mean, Battle of Sekigahara and Kawanakajima, these are big battles. So somebody had to not know what they were doing, or somebody had to get outgunned by the other guy. So back in the Roman gladiatorial days, or the huge forces of Troy and Rome. I mean, they did have great tactical strategy: high banded shield, make the turtle come up, and it was thrust, impact, slash, or slash, thrust. Slash, bump, thrust. And so there were certain things that you had to learn in swordsmanship to become functional. And so, but nobody was, after you had been functional, nobody was, hey, no, okay, they weren't doing this type of thing, they weren't focusing on cosmetics. They're only interested in function, and the form would be the function, right? And so because that is so far removed, because it's an impact or impalement methodology, you can't do that today. Like in judo, you can still grab a guy and throw him. In wrestling, you can still, or you still get in, and we can do joint lock, pressure point, takedown, strangulation, throw. All of these things we can do that. And if I just tap, or I go, or I'm unconscious, and you leave me alone, right? But with this, you can't do that, because if you hit the guy 2-3 times, the fight's over, or he's never coming back to the dojo again, or something. So there's such a different mindset with regards to those types of things. So when a guy says a secret, okay, well, I mean, I had a boxing coach as a kid said, "Hey, Patrick, I want you to purposely leave your left hand down fighting that guy." And I went, okay, coach, why? He goes, because that guy, he's got a lazy right hand. He always wants to wind up, throw the right hand down. So if I'm like that, the right hand is going to come here. He says, all you need to do is slide it and right hand. He says, and I go, oh, and he goes, that's a secret. Don't tell anybody. I go, oh, good, okay. So there's that kind of secret. But let me get back to the curriculum. So at Newmon, you learn certain things to build your foundation. And then at Shokyu level, you learn these fundamental instruction skills. And then by the time you get to Chukyu, middle level instruction is very important, because middle level instruction is where the mentor now begins to consider variables. She's a girl, and that's not discrimination, by the way. It's just that's just nature and reality, okay? And girls don't learn the same way boys do. Intellectually or physically challenged learners don't get it the same way alpha or beta athletic learners get it. Old people don't get the same as young people. So these need to be quantified from a pedagogical point of view, right? The acts of violence by which our traditions would be a means, they're never going to change. And the random and unscripted way with which a person attacks you, that's never going to change. Sorry, it changes all the time, right? So the point being this is, if in order to be prepared for it, the guy's going to come to bear hug you. Okay, well, that's great, because if the guy bear hugs you over the arms, you got your hands free on low, you bite. There's lots of things you can do to create the weakness and then exploit the temporary weakness that you created with a follow-up technique. And then because you've done this back and forth so many times in an unscripted and random way, you are fully prepared to negotiate anything that happens after the fact. And that's the part about, that's the difference between learning, practice, and training. Learning is its own set of values. Practice is, that's what they say, practice makes perfect. And it's the practice phase at different levels of aggressive resistance on both sides, by the way, where you learn, or I make the joke and say, that's where you meet Sensei Murphy. And I go, oh, who's Sensei Murphy? And I go, thanks for asking. He's the guy who will show you what can go wrong, will go wrong when you don't want it to go wrong. And so this failure, this inability to get it working, it becomes the lesson itself. And that becomes the focal point. Now we can call that a secret. So okay, I got two more things to say before we conclude the secret thing. So let's say in a perfect world, and I'm going to use this Brazilian jiu-jitsu thing, which is Japanese jiu-jitsu, by the way, introduced to Brazil through Maida and Kimura sensei. Okay, and by the way, my former jiu-jitsu teacher, my former jiu-jitsu teacher, Professor Wally J, but my original judo teacher, his teacher trained with Kimura in Japan back in the 60s. So I mean, I know the history very well. If I blindfold you and put an armbar on you, can I say, was that a Brazilian jiu-jitsu armbar, or was that a jump? Come on, it's semantics, okay? But so we're talking about business and commercialism. So I will go on. But the point is this: in a perfect world, a white belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu should not be able to defeat a blue belt in jiu-jitsu in a perfect world. So I know size doesn't matter, and unless it's a porno film. Okay. And the point is this, is that because the learning is scripted, at Newman, you learn this and this and this. So at Newman, when you went through the gate, you wouldn't learn something from Shokyu, or you wouldn't learn a secret technique. You would learn this body, because without this, and consider the body, say, a building block that goes into a foundation upon which the next level of learning is going to be, which without you didn't have it, the next level of learning would not be very strong, because you would have no support, you see. So, and then in this same so-called perfect world, which does not exist, by the way, and then a blue belt should never be defeated by a white belt. And if he is, then the white belt should become a blue belt right away. And so on and so on up the pyramid, and a blue belt should not be overcome a purple belt, or a purple belt, a brown belt, and a black belt. So, and the reason why is simply because of mathematics or technical science, is the blue belt doesn't know the techniques that the purple belt does. So the purple belt, or whatever, however you want to describe it, he doesn't, or she doesn't know what the underlings. The underlings don't know what the higher ranks got. So it doesn't matter what they try, the higher ranks already got an answer for it, or a way with which to deal with it. And so in that regard, in the perfect world, every level of teaching above where you are is in many ways a secret. But they don't call it a secret. They call it the Newman, the Shokyu, the Chukyu. Oh, he's doing the Jokyu level. Oh, no, he's still on the, Shuhari. I can't tell you when you're going to come out of Shu. You might never come out of it, or you might never even know what it is. And I'm amazed. I travel around the world and I talk to people about this. And go, excuse me. Yes, what is it? What's Shuhari? So I go, oh, okay. Yes, well, that's another lecture, okay? And so, not everybody knows these types of things, or they know them under a different name or under a different way of embracing, right? So, okay, so let's say it's Katori Shinto-ryu or Hayashi Zakiru, Yagyu Shinga, whatever it is. And now you've been training for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. And the teacher says, we'd like to invite you now to do the Keppan. You've proved your loyalty. And, we're bringing you into the family, going to do the Keppan. And now we're going to teach you the secrets. And the secrets just might be, as I say, the level up on learning what you haven't learned yet.
Yeah. But isn't this the mystery part of the martial arts? That you get the part of the family and the teacher teaches you something which is designated as special or secret?
Well, you know as well as I do that there's the soke, and then there's the shihans, and then there's the hanshi, the kyoshi, the renchi, the shidoen, or there's all kinds of different levels of whoever what. But remember now, what we're talking about, it comes from a culture of conformity that's nestled into a Confucian-based mindset, where the cultural mechanism used is about imitative behavior and the trickle-down effect, which perpetuates this conformist mindset. We call it the senpai kohai system, and the junior always imitates the ways of the senior. So in this flow of energy and technique in life, it's as I say, you never learn what the next guy knows until you're ready, and then when you learn that, you hold kind of power over the guys below you, so to speak. But that's in this. When I say a perfect world, let me forget that and say in a culture of conformity. Mm-hmm. But one of the problems in the West is the Western mind and the Eastern mind they don't work the same. In fact, in many ways, they're diametrically opposite. Even though the outcome they seek might be the same, the way with which they go about it is completely different. And so, nowhere is that example more succinct than here in Japan. Modern Japanese culture is built on a millennium of male-dominated, homogeneous culture of conformity with the Confucian tenets, the filial piety, ancestor worship, no questioning of authority. And when you do question the authority, you get, the metaphor, deru kui wa utareru, or deru kugi wa utareru, which means the protruding nail gets hammered down, and metaphorically speaking, in the culture, when you have somebody who's sticking out and not adhering to the conformity, then they're when I say pounded down, they're told they're in many ways. It's like Arthur Schopenhauer in Western world's sociology, the 3 phases of truth, and that's kind of like Machiavelli's take on if and when you develop some way of doing something that's maybe faster, quicker, better, that's subjective, I know, then perhaps an existing way. Right away for enemies, you're going to have the guys who've already fared well with the long-standing tradition. Mm-hmm. And so Schopenhauer said, first, the 3 stages of truth. First, you will be ridiculed for thinking that way. And if the ridiculing doesn't work, then, of course, they will oppose you. And opposition can be violent. It just depends on what's at stake, And then, of course, the third one is self-evidency, where, we knew it before him anyway, And I see it all the time, I see it all the time. And so anyway, back, and we'll end on secrets now. So, I had an interesting conversation just this morning with the Shimabukuro Zenpo sensei from Seibukan. He's a great guy, by the way. Anyway, and we have this same, about the work I'm doing with Kian Chotogu. He goes, he said, these people, he said, you know what he says, you know what the mixed martial art and all the crazy people in the world need right now is they need some traditional karate. He says, because it's the one constant that never changes. They need some tradition in their life, this ability to be able to, settle down, this idea of always becoming what they call it, Henry Ford, who was the last of his kind with the age of industrialization, the so-called not aristocrats, but what do they call them? The Illuminatis, okay? He came up with an idea about simplicity for automobiles. And a Japanese car company, Japanese automotive industry took it over. They call it Kaizen. And all of a sudden, as soon as it became Japanese, everybody started discovering it. And Kaizen was this process of simplicity, seemingly inspired by Zen, but it was not. And it was about they made an acronym for it. And a lot of these guys like Tony Robbins and these public speakers had embraced it in order to to create the success in their and really what it was, the CANI was the CANI, which meant constant and never-ending improvement. And it was this idea that you should be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And even if you jump ahead 2 steps, you can fall back 1, you're still moving forward. And so the idea of training, learning, training, practicing training was, once you've learned something and then you've practiced it to make it exclusively yours, you can then train. And the training is like the dueling with a sword. You're already functioning with it. You're just keeping your skills sharp. And so how about someone shows up in the dueling process and does something you've never seen before? Is that going to be called a secret? So today we say that some of the secrets really lie right before you. And often the best place to hide a secret is right in front of somebody, because often they're either so engaged by misdirection or the inability to see what's truly valuable that the lesson goes over their head, or they don't miss it at all. Now, did Toyama Sensei have something? Was there some mystery yes, there was, but I'm not allowed to teach it to you. So so anyway, we'll go back. So the end result was no. And because science is what helps us resolve mystery, and art is something that we can take then to express that science in our own individual way. And whether someone else understands that or not, that's not your fault. So sometimes your job, and like, for example, like you, my job is a teacher, and my job is to be able to explain these issues to learners. Well, often in doing that, I love to embrace this Confucian mindset. I love this Taoist application to, you could even call it Socratic thinking if you like, is if you go outside the Oriental mindset, is if you can teach a learner how to lift up one corner of the paper, believing that the answers will be on the bottom part of the paper, you then you don't prevent his progress, but you encourage the progress of the learner by having them learn how to lift up the other 3 corners of the page themselves. Because self-discovery doesn't always follow the same pathway. And I can't tell a learner, okay, this is a bicycle, these are the little training wheels, and because the training wheels are on it, your child will not fall off the bike. But pretty soon they're going to get bored and they want to take the wheels off. And then they might stagger and fall a couple of times before they learn to keep their balance. And then somebody might ask me, well, how long will that be? And I'll say, I cannot tell you, because maybe how long it takes that person to ride the bike is not the same as the other person. And it's the same thing from a pedagogical point of view. You have 20, 30, 40 students in your class. You're teaching 4-fist punching or whatever, whatever you're doing. And, there's 3 guys over here. they got it perfectly. There's 4 or 5 guys, they're struggling with it, and there's 2 people at the end of the line. They don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And and so on that line, the pedagogical line, there's always the small group of alpha learners. They get it right away. And diametrically speaking, at the other end of that is you've got the people who never get it. But because they cannot get it, should that deter them from the journey? Should that maybe make them different from the people who are at the other end of the learning process? We're not going out to fight people in hand-to-hand combat anymore. When on the battlefield, when we lose our sword, and we're not doing that. And certainly we might need some self-defense in our life. And I know there's all kinds of crazy statistics, depends on where you live. But as a rule, most people going through life without, needing their karate skills, And if they do need the karate skills, probably the idea of the powers of observation probably going to pay more dividends than closing their fist and standing back and duking it out with somebody, So what are the secrets and what are not the secrets? And what might be a secret to you might be common sense for someone else. So anyway, look, and I didn't even touch upon, when I was just looking at my written notes, I didn't even touch upon the whole ninja thing, and because everything they do is a secret, and I just don't think there's going to be many people blowing darts at you, or or you're hiding down in the bushes, with your mask on and things like that. So there's it's safe to say now, especially with the amount of books that have been written and films and the documentary films on the anthropology of what we're doing, it's pretty safe to say that if there is a secret, it's not about hand-to-hand escapes, encounters, and functional application. It's probably things along the lines of advice on tactical strategies, in the case of, where it might be a little bit better to sit back and be patient today rather than engaging the enemy, and that's where you have that balance between the scholarly, the intellectual, versus the, I'm just going to be this patient, I don't care what style he's from, So are we going to be able to edit that up into an answer?
Yeah, perfect answer. I would like to go to the next question, and this is about changes. So change, as we know, is the only constant in life. So everything is undergoing changes, including the martial arts and its kata. The martial arts are transmitted from generation to generation by the means of kata, and today we have many different versions of Basai, of Kushanku, of Sanchi, just to name a few examples. Even the relatively recent Pina Kata are performed differently among the students in the ancestral line of Itosa Sensei. So how do you think about changes in the field of kata, and is it allowed to change kata?
Well, again, let's define, and without me making a really long answer, again, 2 hours, let's talk about that for a minute. So first of all, yes, change is the only thing inevitable. But here's what I have with the problem with a lot of folks is, because I told you karate is not functional the way it's been braced and handed down. And just quickly, for the people out there listening to me now who might not get the level at which I'm talking about, let me quantify this first. So many people believe that karate, a brand new term made ratified in December of 1933 by the Dai Nippon Butokai, to become the next modern Japanese fighting art, along with Kendo and Judo, Nike, and all those ones come together, has an older version back in Okinawa, where it originally came from. Mm-hmm. And you and I both know that there's a grappling part to that. There's a weapon part to it. There's a joint manipulation, limb entanglement, blood and air deprivation, balance displacement, fighting on the ground, escapes, encounters, digging into the cavities of the body. So there's all this capturing and controlling stuff, and then there's the systematization of these fighting concepts in a geometrical solo routine. Okay, so you got all these things, right? So so you got there's Tegumi, there's Torite, there's Kata, and Kobudo, Buki, and all this stuff, right? So, but during the latter part of the 19th century, and it probably rose to the apex of popularity from around the mid 1900s in China, with the Opium Wars starting 1840, 1842, and then going straight up into the failure, the disgraceful failure and exploitation of the Manchu government, leading up to the time of the warlords, the fall of the Qing dynasty, the Boxers' Rebellion, and the remarkable disaster that China fell into, leading up to Japan going to Formosa in 1894-95, then the Sino-Japanese War, and then of course the 1904 fight to Russia. Okay, so and Sahakli. So there's around this 50-year period of time most karate people don't know about, where guns, where firearms became more common than bicycles in China. And that the whole myth of this guy trained in the martial arts his whole life, and he was Superman, and then the guy could just turn around and shoot him with one bullet. Which is characterized in the Harrison Ford movie. What's it called? He's one of those adventures, Indiana Jones, and where the guy's swinging the sword and he's going to kill him, and Indiana Jones pulls out his K-frame 38 and shoots him, right? And so I know that's first of all that's funny, but it's based on the truth, with no physical training whatsoever, you can get a gun, you can buy a pistol, and so these little brigades of former Manchu soldiers ganging together to rape, rob, and pillage type of thing, started infesting the countrysides. Nobody was interested in the fighting arts anymore, and it quietly fell dormant as the rise in popularity of firearms came up, and as I say, Opium Wars, all of this stuff leading into 1900 in Peking, in Beijing. And so what happens was nobody's interested in the so-called fighting arts anymore. But, and least of all the Japanese, who wanted to become modern. You saw that movie with Tom Cruise,
Last Samurai.
Last Samurai. So that's around the Bakumatsu period, and where Japan started. So they were without a warrior class anymore, and then the merchant class was becoming very strong, and the emperor was being led by a different group of people, and so then and in the Meiji period, they say that one of the strongest architects of Meiji period was Inoue Kaoru, who actually, by the way, is a great grandfather of Inoue Motokatsu, by the way, and he held on to three separate principal Japanese concepts of Japanese culture, and the rest he brought in: France, Prussia, Russia, America, England. Brought them in to learn and to transform Japan into a modern culture within 50 years. And those three things that they kept, which made the Japanese people who they are, with the exception of the distortation of spiritual beliefs that were done at the hands of the political propagandists during a period of radical military escalation, is you've got this, it's called Nihonjiron, and Nihonjiron means the uniqueness of the Japanese race. Okay, and then you got Kokutai Hongi, or better known as Meiji no Kokutai Hongi, which is national polity. National polity was this manipulative propaganda that suggested that the Japanese people should live in harmony with each other through the principle of wa, and wa was described as this harmonious, ideal utopian living method of conformity. But really, I love Carl Van Wolveren's definition out of Enigma of Japanese Power, a book which was interesting enough banned in Japan, which describes this wa as the coerced desire to place so my apologies. This coerced pressure to place personal desire behind communal tranquility. So, better to be like the group than the individual. And all tiers of Japanese culture fit into this way of doing things. We say shikata, right? And then, of course, the last one was called shushin. And shushin means it means blind worship to the emperor as God. Those are the three things. Anyway, that's a whole different lecture there. But based upon this, the Japanese didn't want anything to do with the old stuff. That was archaic. We want guns and power and tactical strategy and banks and ships. By the way, the first two ships, not the first two ships, but the first best ships that the Japanese ever got was built by the Americans and the British, called the Katori and the Kashima. And these are the same ships that took the Crown Prince, who would become the emperor, to Okinawa, by the way, and then out to Europe on his little Sawyer Golden Oats. That was called the age of the coming of age, coming of age celebration for that. So anyway, so as Japan was starting to become very westernized, one school of thought came back and said, something, upon reflection, might be a good idea to bring back some of this swordsmanship idea, and not so much its archaic practices, but what the spirit of training represented for physical fitness and social conformity, so that you had guys in law enforcement, and then later would catch on to the military, who were able not just to be able to stay healthy and very important especially in a culture that didn't have social assistance at the time, and be able to handle dangerous situations as law enforcement officials. Then that caught on, and the military started using kendo. And of course, this is where there's a German doctor here who became a chief medical professor at Tokyo University, and he also became the private physician for the son of the Meiji emperor, who would become the Taisho emperor. He didn't do well very long, and it's interesting. When I started throwing this idea around 25 years ago, and I'll be quite honest with you, I first got the idea from Rick Clark in the United States, in America. That was the first time he and I discussed it. And this is going back to, say, the 90s, the mid to late 90s. And it's so funny because I know Heiko Bittman. Heiko Bittman just around that time wrote a book about it. I think interesting coincidence there, But so this idea, because we know in German culture plays a very heavy role in the influence of Japanese culture. Don't forget, of course, as well, in the 30s, in the mid to late 30s, you had the Triaxis Treaty with the imperialists, the Nazis, and the fascists. They called it the Triaxis Treaty. Now what their secret agenda was to kill each other was another story. But so you got this friendly gathering of minds thinking about a particular way with which to handle warfare, if you will, and tactical strategies. But the Germans were the ones. They use wrestling as a form of physical fitness and swordsmanship to learn how to resolve personal differences and be gentlemen and all those the good qualities. So isn't it interesting that at around the same time frames that the German doctors there offering advice to the Taisho emperor during this time of military escalation, they put judo and kendo into the school systems. I mean, is it just a coincidence, or, is there more to it? And of course, we know who we're talking about, right? And during these time frames, you see the guys down in Okinawa, Okinawa, definition, 1868 Meiji Restoration, Okinawa gets the word, hey, you're going down. I think it took until 1879 because they fell under the directorship of Kagoshima, Satsuma in those days, changed the name. Satsuma being Kagoshima. Kagoshima is part of Kyushu. And so they bled the treasury dry over the hundreds of years. And there was a potato famine, and there was no industry down there. Commerce was terrible. And if you were a child growing up in Okinawa, in the 1800s, your ambition was to get out of Okinawa, go to the mainland, or and just as a matter of interest, when they changed the coolie law in America, when they a derogatory term to describe Chinese workers, they had a law called the coolie law, and so when they put the axe down on the coolie law, you cannot bring any more cheap Chinese labor into America. It opened up the door for Japanese. And the first people jumped on the boats were the Okinawan people. Brazil, Argentina, Hawaii, West Coast, because it opened a door for opportunity. And a lot of people who get their way paid could work their debt off, make money, send it back home, and so on. So there's lots of interesting stories about that. That's another time for another conversation. So it's during this time frame that one Okinawan goes, well, here's a good idea. I can jump on the bandwagon here, and maybe in the same way that kendo and judo are getting a financial subsidy from the government, being recognized by the Mobusho Ministry of Education, and getting a stipend, maybe we can do the same thing here with karate. And here's why I want to make my point. So this whole secret art, and it's not secret in the way that we don't know what you're doing. Everybody knows, he's a martial artist. We just didn't know what the methodology was. And to tell you the truth, Matsumura probably did more Jigen-Ryu swordsmanship than he did. And the other cat out of the bag is, I always interesting to see. No, this is the Shorin-Ryu. Most Shorin-Ryu is really Tomarite anyway. And the Shorin-Ryu is Suidi. It was usually just mostly capturing and controlling, like kind of jujitsu stuff. It's what they call torite, was used in around the castle capital of Shuri, and but that's all politics, and so the Japanese didn't need any grappling. They got jujitsu and judo. They don't need that. They didn't need any toughest and size and bows because they got a sword. Nothing beats the sword. I don't care who you are, and then of course. But they never saw closed fist kobushi. They never saw it before. And the first time the Japanese saw this as a culture was in early 1921. They saw two versions of it. On the 6th of March, 1921, as you know, the Katori and Kashima sailed into Nakagusuku Bay, and the emperor in waiting, the crown prince, got off. And the only reason they were there in the first place was because the commander of the ship was from Okinawa. His name was Kana Kenwa. And that's another, actually, you can read it in my book, Kampenchu. And so anyway, they're there. And of all the many things that they did in a very short space of time was a karate demonstration at Shuri Castle, right? And so keep that in mind. Shuri demonstrate karate, okay? Oh, very impressive. Never saw that before. Now, on the other side of the world, in New Jersey, in March of also 1921, there's a boxing match between Jack Dempsey and the French WBC, WBA rated boxer named Georges Carpentier. And he was also Savat, a Savat fighter as well. And it was a classical battle, the slugger against the boxer, and look, had it gone the distance, George Carpenter would have outpointed him because he was he was peppering him, but you get hit once by Jack Dempsey and you were like breaking ribs, and so he put him down for the count in the fourth round. Now that fight became so famous because it was the first time in boxing history that they had $1 million was gathered for the gate prize. Pathé Pacific Blimp videotaped it from the air. You can still see it on YouTube. And anyway, Pathé. So the film was shown in Tokyo. Now you got to remember, this is the 1920s, right? The Roaring 20s, where the world is out from poverty, it's out from wars, it's a dance and music and art around the world. The gay 20s. I mean, it was the people are enjoying life, and the Japanese, they saw baseball. Oh yeah, we will get some baseball. Oh Jesus, tennis. So dance, music, and so and this was going to be culminated in 1922 for this cultural kind of World's Fair. And part of that in May, June was going to be the athletic exhibition in Tokyo. And, I was very interesting about, I was reading Funagoshi Gichin's Ryukyu Kempo, 1922. He wrote it on the boat on the way up, by the way. And, as you know, in 1923, the Kanto earthquake destroyed the plates. And the drawings and the cover was all by the artist Hoen Kosugi, but in the second one they actually took photographs, right? And there's a little part in the back there that goes. So in early in 1921, when he was coming up, he goes, yeah, he said, I'm sorry, 1922. He goes, yeah, I was very fascinated by the article last November that described karate, and I went, okay, that's right out of context. What article? Where? It took me forever. I couldn't find it. Anyway, I couldn't find it. And my dear friend and colleague, also in Tokyo, Joe Swift, found it for me and sent it to me. I did a translation for it. I published it in Tanpenshu. But it was written by a guy named Sasaki Gogai, and he said, during this age of enthusiasm, if you will, about the Japanese bringing all kinds of, even the school uniforms were looked like Prussian military costumes, or a combination between business suits because the influence from the outside world was so large. And Sasaki Gogai said, "Oh, and Dempsey didn't want to come here. I'm not teaching Japs anything, which was the term right up until post-war year. Jap is another derogatory term, meaning Japanese people, just same as coolie for Chinese, right? And so he had no interest to come here. And Sasaki Gogai in his article said, we don't need him. We have those secret fistic traditions right here in our nation. Why? In the Kingdom Islands to the south." And he talks about karate, and he gives a few examples of it. And so you think about this. That stirred a lot of interest. Japanese wanted boxing. They couldn't get it. Somebody said, we don't need it. We got it out there. Okay, so let's get some of it. Well, isn't it interesting? Because the guy who took the guy who took the Crown Prince down there to go over to Europe, they saw a karate demonstration. So let's put the two connections together and we'll come up with inviting that guy up here to the mainland to give a demonstration. And that's how they see punching, and it's largely due to Kano Jigoro. The founder of judo has a lot. He has an understated value in the development of karate on the mainland, but that's another story. And Konishi Yasuhiro and Otsuka Hironori. So that's how we see closed fist punching come up here. And the only other thing was kata. Nobody ever seen kata before. No, kata. So the tradition that was popularized in the school system in Okinawa took the secrets out from behind the closed doors of secrecy, modified its practice, created a smaller versions of, for the lack of a better description, German Tullner calisthenics in 5 sets. School, you went to school for 5 years in those days, as a schoolyard group calisthenic exercise that you would do every day, all year long, for the 5 years you went to school. And oh, look, you would be, by the time you finish school at 16 or 17 years old, well, you would just be coincidentally old enough to go in and do your 2-year draft military conscription with the military. You'd have a fit body with an unused mind. And so you were physically fit and socially conformed. Mm-hmm. And so that was a very big thing, supported by the Ministry of Education, Department of War, Dainapan Butokokai. And you got to remember that Japan, the empire of Japan, started around, when I say going out from Japan, started when they defeated the Chinese in Taiwan, in Formosa, 1890-45. And then going into China. And then wherever, and Southeast Asia, wherever they went, they would build these little, they build their communities. Once they occupied the country, they would build like little Batoko dens, in Singapore and KL and Taiwan, and like little Dainapan Batokai buildings, and they would teach all those stuff there. And so what we saw on the mainland, and the point I'm going to make in case the listeners is going, where's he going now, is I'm telling you about Kata right now, because we're talking about, should it be changed, should it not be changed, what does it represent? And I want to provide a little bit of background upon which you can let him go, okay, I got it. And so Kata had become little more than a modified version of group calisthenics that no longer focused on its original culminating the secret lessons you should have already learned in a 2-person scenario-driven fighting art, represented in a solo representation that culminated. Now it was a guy on a platform blowing a whistle, and you did one move here and one up and down, and even though it's not an aerobic practice, it was still a good coordinating strength routine, and it was a form of calisthenics. Long before the Western world, the American Western world knew what calisthenics were, and so the kata basically had no meaning at all, absolutely zero meaning, other than to make you fit. And all of these other suppositions and conjecture that's today, that took the dangerous. It was a calisthenic. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. Now, you're going to remember as these schools started to open on the mainland, and let me think, you know this, from around the time the first wave of Okinawans came up, from around the late teens, say 1917, 18, Matayoshi Shinko, Gima Shinken, Motobu Choki, Funagoshi Gichin, Chitoshi Tsuyoshi, Toyama Kanken, Miyagi Chojin, Mabuni Kenwa, this group of people here, there was no pedagogy. Everybody taught what they knew their way. And so this is why the Dainapan Butokokai stepped forward, because of the weight of existing conformist beliefs in Japanese Budo. The karate people had to adhere to this. And you know what they are. I don't have to tell you, the changing of the ideogram and the suffix and the prefix and the dankyu, belt, dogi, and then of course finding using Iken Hisatsu Ippon Shiai Shobu format to find a platform upon which to test your physical skill and your fighting spirit had to be established before they ratified the art. And as a result of that, and as the war years started to pump up, they started naming, registering their schools. And because of the chaos created by the war, and then of course the war didn't go well for Japan, and then of course McCarthy and the Allied forces shut down the study of the fighting arts. By the time it resurfaced again, those arts which were already systematized, you know, Aikido and Kendo and Judo, there were no problems there. But karate was like a, you know, it was like nobody was at the helm, you know. There wasn't a commander, you know, because it had never really truly come together outside of its calisthenics university, you know, methodology. And really, to tell you the truth, from then till now, there's still argument back and forth. My style's better than yours, and this is the secret style and everything. So it brings me to the Kata thing. And so the guy says, "You must never change a Kata, never." And I'll tell you why people say this. Is they say it because it's a part of Japanese conformist-based culture. It's a Confucian tenet that it's like you can't question authority. It's not that it's rude, or which it is. I mean, it's considered disrespectful, grossly disrespectful. But it's just that, I mean, okay, the seniors invented it. They're gone. It's been passed down all these years this way. That's because nobody ever bothered to use critical thinking, by the way, and nobody knows what it's for. So everybody's hey, guess what? I just discovered there are throws in karate. Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. Gee, we didn't know that like 20 years ago and everything, right? And so everybody and his brother now is coming up with an idea, and it's wonderful. I think that's great. That beats the heck out of going up and down the floor, mindless repetitions, doing nothing, except for they tend to lose the whole physical fitness part of it. You know, everybody's thinking you to death. You know, my favorites are put the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, balance your toe, think the color green, and then wham, he'll fall unconscious. You know, I mean, it's gone really from the sublime to the mundane to the absolute ridiculousness. Okay, and everybody, his brothers, tested these guys. That's why I say the MMA. I mean, there's a guy in China, by the way, that want to put him in jail. By the way, now he's a big, strong guy, nice guy, by the way. He's a nice guy, right? But he's another guy just thinking outside the box. He's sick and tired of the secrets of kung fu, you know. And he said, "Come on, I'll challenge anybody. I don't care if I get beat up. I'm sorry, I get beat up. I'll sign the papers, you know." And he's fought a few of these masters, you know, and of course he's hurt them, you know. He's you know, and it's you know, and it's so. I'm not saying that's better and this is worse. What I'm saying is that from the mid-19th century until the popularization of karate in the school system in Japan, the original conceptual practices fell quietly dormant, were never reinvestigated, and continued to grow, and a very conformist-based mindset kept them in a box. And there's only one place in the world you could keep that alive, and it's in a conformist-based culture, which is right here. Yeah. And because of the ancestor worship and the hand-me-down traditions, and then, of course, the enormous emphasis placed upon not meant to be touched. And then, you know the way it goes, like, so you know, the dojo system is built upon the hierarchy of the samurai. So, for example, the way you sit in the dojo, you've got the showman, and then, you know, the head guy sits here, and then off to his left is on a diagonal angle is the lieutenants, you know. So he's the general, then the lieutenants here, and then, you know, in the front row, going from left to right, you know, in the front row is the most senior, you know, warriors, and then behind them in rows are the guy at the back, the guys at the back, they would be the lesser type of thing. So that's the system, right? But that doesn't work anymore, you know, from a functional point of view. So, for example, if you go to the dojo and the guy goes, "Oh, who's that?" "He's the master." He goes, "Really? he doesn't even know how to punch. Shh, don't say that. He's the master. And you know what happens is maybe, and I'm just hypothetically saying this, maybe that guy's grandfather practiced with the guy who brought it back from China.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Let's just say in 18 la la la, you know, he was an interpreter on a boat, or he was a captain of a vessel, or he was a scribe or an admin or a upperclassman. Take whatever you want. And he went to China, or he was a security guy. And you know, so he would teach his family. Usually it's the firstborn son in Confucian mentality. The boy gets everything. So I teach him how to fight and punch and stuff like that. And then when he grows up, you know, he's going to start teaching, you know, maybe the people in the village or in his little community or whatever, you know. And then, you know, then his father dies. He goes, oh, the master has died. They have a ceremony. So now the boy, he becomes the new head of the secret style, right? Mm-hmm. And then in those days, training is a lifelong thing, right? So you know, now the boy is 75 years old, mm-hmm. and he got the 20 guys who practice with him all their lives. So when he dies, then the next senior guy takes over. Mm-hmm. Usually it's his son. Now, where you start to run into problems now in the modern times is the father is teaching, or the head is teaching, and he's got that 25 inner circle students, and they all become very, very good. And then the guy gets married, and maybe he might even marry one of the students or something, and then he has children, and the children are growing up and they're learning in the dojo. And now by the time maybe the boy is 25 years old or 32 years old, the father dies. Mm-hmm. And the father dies, then all the inner circle students get together, they have a funeral, send them off, and everybody sits down and says, okay, we're going to start training again. And then all the senior guys who were there training in the dojo before the boy was even born, mm-hmm. they stand back and they say, Sensei, please lead us. And that's the way it goes. And that's the tradition here.
Yeah.
But see, that tradition don't work very well in the 21st century or the 20th century. And we've seen it many times over and over. And then what happens is these karate organizations, they create a karate organization. And one of the problems seems to be with the karate organizations, or not just karate, but you know, all of them, is one guy gets in charge and he wants to perpetuate the same mindset where he's going to be the boss and nobody else can do anything. They got to do what he's telling them to do. And we're living in a world today where that doesn't work. You don't demand respect. You have to command it by example. That's the way you do it. Yeah. I was in a group like that for many, many years with Richard Kim and the Batoka. It was like, this is a benevolent dictatorship and I'm the leader. And I go, okay, And I just remember I stood in line for years. And finally, by the time I got to the front of the line, I realized, Christ, I'm in the wrong line. I was in the wrong line. So I left and I created my own line. And I promised myself, if nobody else, that will never happen again if I'm in charge. Mm. My job is to empower anybody who wants to learn and do everything and anything in order to make sure that they're well educated, because I believe that education is the tool with which freedom evolves. And there's nothing better than making sure everybody gets it exactly the way it is, rather than the way you want it to be, and then say, look, it's best that you probably go off and do your own thing now. I don't want to go. Nobody wants to go there. You can't get rid of them after a while, because they say, hey, he's not a bad guy, and I think where that doesn't work best is when you get that narcissistic sociopathic mentality, whereas that on the third day I'm better than the master already, and I'm gonna go start my own style. But so anyway, back to should kata be changed? Okay, I'm of two minds. Let me give you my first mind first. Yes, the pina and katas have been changed many times, but you know why? And I just use the pina and hand as an example because they're old. Okay, the Chinese whispers. Chinese whispers. So maybe if some, I know you. In case some of your listeners don't know. Okay, so there's this thing called Chinese whispers, and it goes like this. There's in the joke. You whisper something to somebody else, and then he turns around because everybody's turned around, and then he whispers it to somebody else, or you can do it physically. You can say everybody's facing that way, and I tap the guy, and he turns around, and I go, you go, I go. I go, oh, okay, and the other guy turns around, he goes. And by the time it gets the other guy, it's like, or it's not even handled. So it changes all the time through, right? And that's in 1 minute. Can you imagine when somebody's supposed to be doing a complex set of templates, and not everybody is alpha gold medalist gymnastics routine? Some people, yes, some people no. Other people's visual, audio visual kinesthetic learners, and it's going through so many hands without function, by the way. Nobody says, the guy's grabbed me. So the first thing you do is spit in his face, flick him in the testicles, slap, nobody's saying this. They're saying, if he punches you like it, everything's a punch, And then, so because there's no function, it's all form. It's all cosmetic. And they go, no. Okay, yeah, okay, or no, yeah, okay, and they're moving your arm 1 inch, and your patch on your crust is wrong, got to be 2 inches over, and everybody's got to do it exact, and I'll give an example right here in Okinawa. So I went to say one school, I want to say the name, Goju-Ryu. So I went to say one Goju-Ryu school, and they said my teacher learned directly from the founder of Goju-Ryu. The founder. Okay, so that all by itself is worth a dissertation as well. Like, what is Goju-Ryu or Shudokan or Shon? What is it not just an interpretation of something that came from somewhere else first? Another conversation.
Yeah.
So this guy, let's say his name is Miyagi Chojin, he taught this way to this guy, and that guy says, "Thank you. I'll never change it." Okay. And he went on to teach it the same way, But the other guy said, I learned it also from Miyagi Chojin, but he's doing it a different way. He said, just a minute. The other guy said, I don't care what the other guy said. I'm telling you, this is the way. And then you meet a third guy, and he also trained with the founder, and they're doing it another way. Now, the differences might not be radical, but they're different. And they're noticeable and quantifiable. Okay, so that deserves some critical thought. Okay, so I'm wondering, well, could it be that Miyagi Chojin maybe knew it better at a different age, or maybe didn't know it so well at a younger age, or maybe Miyagi Chojin knew it implicitly, but he thought maybe I better teach it this way to that guy. Or maybe just the guys got it wrong. So there are quite a few variables there. Whatever is, everybody's doing the same thing differently. Now, from my perspective, I think that's a great thing, by the way.
Yeah.
All pictures don't come out the same way, even if it's the same ink and all that. And I don't believe that everybody can do the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcome. In fact, I know that's the truth. I know it. I work with military, law enforcement, security, everybody in the field. I know what I'm talking about. So I know that there has to be external consideration for those variables: size, weight, gender, circumstances. I like to say it's the dog in the fight in the dog, and the circumstances where the fight's taking place. So those are the three variables. But the act of violence is never going to change, right? Especially when it's random and unscripted. I got a throat. And because I have a throat, it can be only grab. You can only grab it so many different ways. From the front, one hand, two, from the side, from the back, underneath, So you have to understand the dynamics of the technique first before you can understand how it's countered. And then there has to be a process through which learning the dynamics in a pedagogical sense provides you with a methodical practice with which to effectively overcome it, and then how to deal with all the little variables when it doesn't work, or he's too strong, or in a perfect world it works this way. But how about if I got a bag of groceries in my hand and I'm bent over putting them into my car and I get jumped from behind? Okay, so all kinds of the variables, So here's what I say about the changing part. If you're practicing learning and training in the art of karate because you want to honor the heritage of the legacy of that man, then I think you better never change anything. You better do it exactly the way he taught you, because it's not about fighting. It's about the legacy and the heritage of that person. And he said, you do this and this, so you should do that for the rest of your life. But if you are doing it that way, don't come back to me and say, this is against the punch. Don't do that. Because that's where the incongruity, the incongruous, what one side's doing doesn't match the other side. Incongruous. That don't do that with me. You can say, we do it this way for health. Great, no problem. One, we do this for competition. That's two. We do this for physical fitness. We do this because it's part of our culture. We do this for self-defense. No, you don't. Nah. And the reason you don't is because that's not what ever happened in a real fight. Yeah. So you got 4 out of 5 is good. So now let me give you the other. That's one side of my brain, Now let me give the other side. Okay. Knowing what I just told you, would you rather learn Basai Dai? Would you learn Basai Dai arguably the way it's supposed to be done by Toyama or Kohei or Kinjo or whoever, right? Would you rather done that way? And that's probably a bad example, Basai, because there's so many Basai, so many versions of it. But anyway, let's just say there was one version. Would you rather be doing Basai Dai or Matsumura Basai the way you were shown, even though you have no idea what it means, or let me see if the microphone's on here, okay? Or worse even still, you think it's against these ridiculous, I'll tell you like this, and you do this, and then you do this, and then and of course, in the meantime, the blue belt in BJJ would strangle you to death, So it's just not realistic, okay? So my question is, would you rather learn the authentic kata that way and never know what it means? Or would you say, I'm going to change it a little bit to fit my own? Because now, if you're going to do that, I suggest this. Don't change it. I really honestly believe you should never change those katas, because something, you didn't make them. You really don't know what the guy was thinking. Did he really know what this was? The escape from being strangled? Or, I don't know, Bob did it, so I do the same thing. You don't know why. You weren't there 100 or 200 years ago to make those. So if one Shu or one Do or Shibanaku Sonku is done, just leave it there. It can be a window. It can be a time capsule through which you can look into yesteryear. And if we discover some new formula, we can use it to explore the dynamics of what this is. Now, there's another guy, some Canadian guy. He came up with this concept. He called it the acts of physical violence, which are habitual in human nature. And it didn't matter that it was 500 years ago at the Shaolin Temple or yesterday in Vienna. the way a guy grabs you, long as it's empty-handed, one against one, and not standing back and go, come on, let's fight. That's not self-defense. You might be fighting for your life, but there's always the chance of running away, because I don't want to fight, right? Oh, Lord that never enters the mind of men for some reason, especially younger ones, or with the fire water, and that's where this ego-related stuff comes in. So I thought to myself, having done the legwork, and then when I stumbled across this, the first thing I thought was, I said, nah, that cannot be it. And you know why I thought that? And I told you the Beni Hassan temple tombs, the Kator Shinzuru two-person rows, the Wing Chun Hungar, Bubishi, all the stuff, the wrestling, escapes counters, I've been through it all, right? And the funny part about it is, if you go talk to a BJJ guy or a wrestler, or MMA guy, and you say, okay, well, if a guy gets you in a guillotine, you do this and this, and you get out. They go like this. They go, hi, thanks, and I go and practice it. Mm-hmm. Show it to a karate guy. They go, oh my god, he found the Bible. It's in judo, wrestling, grappling. It's like a piece of cake. It's like ABCs. It's like simple stuff. Yeah. Anything that's hands-on. But all the theoretical stuff. Oh no, it's impossible. That's not what Miyagi was thinking. I tell you this. I really honestly believe that if Miyagi was alive, or Funagoshi, or any of these guys alive, and they could get a look at what we're doing today, they go, thank you. Somebody, and this whole thing about tradition, tradition is so misunderstood, but it's also part of this commercial enterprise. They want to keep their business alive. I get it. We want to keep our name alive. I get it. Look, I'm here. I mean, I might be talking like this about it now, but I truly love being here. Mm-hmm. I love this. I love the culture. I don't have any problem with the conformity. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I have a couple of problems with the conformity, but come on. Austria's got the same problem. Canada's got the same problem. Maybe not in the Japanese, conformity sense of the way, but listen, that Canadian government, Jesus Christ, like get that guy out of there. It's almost as bad as the Mickey Mouse guy they got in America now. But and so they say the country's only as strong as its leadership, and the leadership is just pathetic. We have problems here as well. But I like it here. It's friendly. There's great food. The culture is wonderful. The weather's great. It's a land of karate. I can be every day with people who think like me, and just have a wonderful time. And I don't plan on ever going anywhere again. I'm staying right here, But do I have a problem with conformity? Yeah, there's things, There's a couple of people here who won't talk to me. They won't. I'm doing this Kian Shotoku research, and two guys who I want to meet. And not that they have anything secret, but I wanted to do it as a courtesy, first of all. And I wanted to share some things that I know they don't have. Yeah. They don't want to meet me. Mm-hmm. And I went, okay. And then I heard from somebody else who does know. They said, oh yeah, he says, you're not Okinawan, what do you really know? You don't know any, you're not Okinawan. You're not Japanese. Yeah. What the hell? Wake up. What would you know about the fighting arts? So I go, okay, that's great, And I'm over talking to a guy. He goes, don't you know who that guy is? Who? The gaijin over there. He goes, I don't know who he is. Oh, he's a famous karate. I am a famous karate teacher. I went to America and I taught the 2 seminars. And I have my dojo. He knows nothing. And he goes, okay. He goes, that guy taught hundreds of seminars all over the world. And he goes, he really, Oh, and then change. Now over here, you can have a guy he's Japanese or Okinawan, and he doesn't know anything. Oh, that's the master over there. And so there's a very interesting cultural dichotomy that exists, where because you fit into a particular demographic, you must be this particular person. And if you're not a demographic, you don't think of it. And the truth is, people have been looking outside of Okinawa for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Even Okinawans are looking outside of Okinawa to find and bring back into their culture. It's like Shibana's quote, about the pond. If the pond doesn't have a fresh tributary of water, the water becomes stagnant, the pond dies. And the metaphor is very good, Yeah. And I don't think there's any new, I don't think anybody's developing anything new, The arm only bends one way. When you learn how to put a category lever on it, 1, 2, or 3, it's going to cause pain. Yeah. Pain I can control or break, and so the body hasn't changed, the science hasn't changed, the acts of physical violence, they remain constant. So what must it be then? If all those things are constant, what must it be that has changed? Oh, maybe it's been our understanding of this science that has, and that's, I think, what people have to get. And I believe that, in Toyama's time, he was very adamant about wanting to push this same idea. And I just think, especially and it very well, in his area, the post-war era, especially down in the Kanto, in the Kansai district, the Korean, the discrimination was so rife. And then, of course, the criminals, the crime syndicate, the Yakuza were very rife. You had your hands tied. You're very limited to what you could do, and nobody wants a Koreans running the. And he had Chinese. What's the guy's name from Taiwan? Mr. Sai was his name. Sai. Mr. Sai. Joe, he's and a great white crane guy, by the way. But he's Chinese. You got the Korean guys in there with him. You got Mr. Kinjo from Okinawa, and the Okinawans, nobody respected them on the mainland anyway, And then you got guys like Yamaguchi Gogan, and even in Yamaguchi's group, you got the So Nei-chu, another Korean, you got Oyama Masatatsu and all these guys. So it was a real, very fluid and volatile, embryonic time. Yeah. And so I'm not surprised that it kind of fell apart. And but look, thanks to you, hey, and by the way, I was talking to Toby Stansbury the other day. Yeah. And
he's having an.
I don't know him. Yeah. I didn't know that, but so we started. I mean, we've exchanged a few emails here and there, and I think mostly his name came up because some other people were saying, "Don't you know who Toby Stansbury is?" I went, "I have no idea." And we were talking about your book, and I was advertising on my website, and some guy said, "I didn't see Toby Stansbury's name anywhere," and I went, "Like, why would Toby Stansbury's name be on Christian Bolina's book? Who's Christian Bolina?" And I went, "Okay, never mind. If you don't know who he is, we're not going to have a conversation." And then later he comes back and goes, "Oh, I didn't know who Christian Bolina was." And it's it's like when you live in a little, it's like the frog in a well compared to the ocean, Yeah. And but Toby says to me, he says, so he's doing the work on Toyama, looking at Toyama in Taiwan in those years. And I said, well, okay, all due respect, I wish you luck. I myself am not interested in that. I'm chasing Kanchotokyu now in Taiwan. And I know he was there in 1930. He goes, "Oh, really? Well, I just found this newspaper article. Would you like it?" I went, "Yes, please." And I got it. And oh my God. So with just a tiny little article, but it changed one. So if Kanchotoku was in Taiwan in 1930, he could not have been with Kwairyō Sei. And I talked to Hisataka Masayuki many, many years ago about this. And he said to me, no, 1930 with my father, Kudaka Kori, and Kwairyō Sei. And I went, oh. So I always held that story. And I know it's a story Toyama told as well. But then when I came in contact with the Kauai family here, and I looked at the Koseki Tohan, the family register, Kauai Roshi died in 1926, and I went, okay. But they said his son also practiced martial arts, so it could have been him, but I don't know. Real say no. Now I get this article. It clearly states, welcome the Okinawan Shihan Kianchotoku, who's here to see Sensei so-and-so, in 1926, clearly 1926. So it's funny, so that opened up the door. So now I tried to get through the university to get logged into the digital archives. And I don't care about the Taiwan newspaper now. I only care about the Taiwan newspaper when it was occupied by Japan from 1895-96 after the war until around 1945. And then even at one point they named the Chinese, but then after a while it became all Japanese, And so I bet there's got to be some good stuff in there, And it's the same as looking up here up in Kagoshima, Kyushu, because in Kagoshima, even the Ministry of the Okinawa's school system was headed by I forgot the guy's name off the top of my head. At the turn of the century, 1900, it was this guy, and I think for the next 20 years they were under control until around the turn of the century. It was well after 1879, early 1900s, before they got their own chief. I bet there's lots of newspaper articles from, Kagoshima area about Ryukyu and Okinawa that's got to do with what you and I are interested in, type of thing. So anyway, so to that end, we continue searching, and I think it's guys like me and you, Joe Swift, Andy, people like this, we just keep mixing it up. But I get that feeling dealing with some of these guys now, it's like all of a sudden, it's like a secret. You're not allowed to share. I shared everything I've ever had with everybody, never held anything back. Now it's like, oh no, that's a secret. I've got to, I'm not allowed to share it with anybody till I publish my book or something. I guess they're more familiar with plagiarists than I am. My work's been, taken by so many people and never given credit. You're an exception. Yeah. And I see now it's different. But anyway, so about the Kata thing, we're of two minds, Are you going to be a cultural traditionalist? That means you're never going to change it. And you must always be happy with what you got. Don't seek to change that which does not need to be changed. Number two, if you are a progressive traditionalist and you don't believe tradition is keeping the ashes of the master in a box and blindly following the guy who's leading the show, then you cannot follow them. Then you got to believe that tradition is about continually seeking out that which the pioneers sought. And that's what tradition is. That's what Joseph Campbell, that's why I like his this anthropologist so much, because he said, every generation produce an innovative mind who, in an effort to keep their traditions a living experience for the community that they serve, they find reason with which to reinterpret the common principles upon which it rests. And in doing so, in spite of the lip service, paid to, this is better than that, it becomes more innovative ways of doing and accomplishing the very same thing. And that, in my opinion, is what tradition is about. But it's not an easy, it's very difficult to tell someone that who's been living another way all their life. They don't interpret that as, that's a great idea, I'll think about it. They go, you are a bad man. And you're trying to so it's that Machiavelli, type of thing. And I've experienced that type of thing as well. So
yeah, actually, I think we should also have to look at the time. We are running out of time. You also know that I had a lot of other questions, but I think we have to end the interview. I thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure.
Is it more than 1 hour already?
It's right. It's more than 2 hours already.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It was a super pleasure and a great honor at the same time for me. So many of your statements and your reflections are very important for me on a personal level. And how can it express it best? Today you have again planted some new seeds in me, in particular the seed to maintain the tradition of karate and to preserve my views and my ideas for future generations. Thank you very, very much for this interview. I'm so grateful.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I'm sorry that we went over. What question did we get to, by the way? Did we get to?
There was one question I wanted to ask you. If a student comes to you after training and asks you the following question, Hanshi, based on all your experience, please tell me, what are the secrets of martial arts? And so what would you answer the students? So I think that would have been also a very important question.
And once again, there's the easy question, like number one, there are no secrets, right? That's the easy one. And then number two, there's the, because everything is a secret because they don't know it, right? And, so the secret of patience, the secret of perseverance, the secret of learning how to stand up after you fall down, the secret of when you're depressed and frustrated and you're fed up with everything, there's the secret of how to, regain that confidence and that ability. And then there's, so how you approach that, there's all that. The most important thing is to remain happy, kind, and focused. Nothing's a better secret than that, but those are the things that you kind of learn if you have a good guide, and it's like going somewhere you've never been before. If you don't have a guide, you better have a map, because you're going to get lost, and the further you get lost, the worse you're going to be. And that's why that's why at least one of the Confucian ideals about having that mentor is such a valuable thing. But we can always come back and talk another time if you like. I'm happy to do that. So you let me know how you'd like to pursue this, and or you play this one for your group, and if they're saying, oh yeah, God, Sensei Hanshi, file that under G. We never want to see this guy again. I'm okay with that. Or if they go, oh my God, hey, we'd like to hear more of what this guy has to say, we can come back and do another version of finishing how many other questions there were there. So
thank you so much, Hanshi. Thank you very much. And I wish you good luck for your Shudokan project.
Yeah. Do you have any, do you have any Kian Chotoku stuff, by the way, or no? I mean, other than what everybody knows already, right? Yeah. Okay, well, my friend, thank you very much.
Thank you. I will also send you the interview. I will edit it a little bit, and I will send it with WeTransfer link.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And where do you put it on your website or somewhere? Or do you put it on YouTube?
Yes, of course. I will put it on the website, and I think I will also put it on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay.
Or YouTube. Yeah. I will do that next week.
Yeah. Welcome. Do it when you do it when you do it. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Hanshi, thank you very much.
Thanks, Christian.
Hanshi, thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Hanshi. See you later. Bye-bye.